Hey, this is Sean Gilligan from Longspeak. Just want to do a quick walkthrough of our standard output from our composite tool. I'm going to share my screen so you can take a look at what I'm looking at here. Okay, so in this report, the first six tabs are all the results of the calculations. So all of these that I'm highlighting here are the final results, just formatted in different ways and showing different periods. The remaining five tabs here are all going to be related to analyzing those results. So when you first get the report, usually you want to focus on these five tabs to make sure that it doesn't look like problems exist in the data before you use the information that's been calculated and presented on these first six tabs. We're going to create a separate video that goes through in detail how to analyze those results. But for now, I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of each tab just so you know what all this information is. The first tab is just some tables that could be used for an advertisement showing common periods for each strategy. So each strategy has its own table showing both gross, net, and the benchmark. In this case, it's just the ETF being used as the benchmark, but this would be whatever your standard index is or whatever you use for benchmark. So 1, 3, and 5, these ones are shorter because the history is just shorter for these strategies, but it would be just the standard periods for an advertisement like 1, 3, 5, and since inception returns. The next tab is all of the standard required statistics for a GIPS report. So when creating the GIPS report, this is usually the table that goes at the top and then the disclosures go under it. So again, broken out by strategy. So there's three different strategies here. This is created before 2020 ended. So this is just a partial year. Normally in the compliant presentations that are now called GIPS reports, it's just full years. You can update it with partial years if you want, but only required to show through the last full year. Dispersion is only showed for this period because it's the only one that has more than 5 accounts for the full year. Otherwise, these would be filled in as well. So yeah, this is basically where you would get all that information to put into your GIPS report. And here, this is a lot of the same information, just formatted differently. If you had a large number of composites, it may be helpful to just sort of filter through this. So we have these filters here. So let's say you just wanted to see everything, all the information for one composite, you could filter that way. Or if you want to see everything just for 2019, for example, you could just filter like this and see all the results for the full year 2019. So this allows you to just kind of filter through and simplify what you're looking at. If you have, like I said, a large number of composites, it could be helpful to use these filters to make this more manageable, because otherwise this could be an overwhelming amount of information. Even more overwhelming could be the monthly and quarterly stats, because instead of only annual, now we have monthly, quarterly, and annual. So we've got monthly assets, the number of accounts in the composite for the month, monthly returns, both gross and net, quarterly, both gross and net, and then annual. If it's not a full year, this will be year to date. Also in this tab, you can see dispersion. So we don't normally report dispersion on a monthly basis, only on an annual basis, but thinking about the analyzing that we'll look at in the later tabs, this is something you may want to look at for consistency. So there's not necessarily a good or bad number, but when you see something jump out, like here, all of a sudden there's over 2%, where normally they're very low here again. So when we get into the analyzing the data, we may find that there's some issues in these months where an account maybe was restricted in some way and should be kicked out of the composite because it's creating some dispersion for those periods. And over here is just the benchmark information also for monthly, quarterly, and annual. Rolling returns. So again, a lot of the same information, but now we have rolling periods. So if you want to see your 3-year numbers through any random date, you can see 3-year. Down here, this composite has a longer record, so you can see 3-year, 5-year. So if you're completing an RFP or creating marketing materials and you need these numbers through any date, you could get that from this tab. And again, filtering can help you just narrow down to just the information you want to see, because this could be a lot of information. So filter by composite, filter by date, whatever you need to do to get the information that you're looking for. If you're just looking for benchmark information, that could be found here. This is just a repeat of what was on this tab, but it's just another place you can grab it if you're just trying to look at the benchmark. So that's it for the presentation of the results. As I mentioned at the beginning, these last 5 tabs are really more about analyzing the results, and we'll make a separate video to really show how to do that. But just to show you what's here, these are flagged accounts. So all of these accounts are either going to be outliers, and we kind of just put this into words. It's all based on standard deviation, but either a minor outlier, an outlier, material outlier, or even an extreme outlier, which is really based on this, the number of standard deviations. So we sort by largest to smallest, then we could see all the biggest deviations kind of going down. Some of these may not be issues, some of them may be, but really this is something we want to look at in detail before trusting that all the results on these tabs are good. We want to look at these potential issues to make sure that no additional changes are needed before finalizing the results. Inclusion and exclusion, this is just a record of the ins and outs of each account going in and out of the composite. All portfolio data, this is literally all of the data for every account. So this is what supports the results on the first 6 tabs. So if a verifier or regulator or anyone is requiring you to prove out the returns, you can calculate every return on the first 6 tabs using what is provided on this all portfolio data tab. Also, as I'll demonstrate when we get into the analyzing the flagged accounts, it's a good place to look at to see the full context of what's happening here. So this is listing only the issues, where this is going to show everything, but will also show the issues that are on the flag tab. So you can see, you know, and something's jumping out, you can see, was it just like a 1-month issue, or is it something that is a frequent issue for that account? Like here, you're seeing there's a bunch of outliers for this particular account for this period. So again, like I mentioned, we'll talk about that in more detail in the video discussing analyzing outlier returns and other issues. The last 2 tabs here, just looking at dispersion. So again, it starts out with showing all of the information. You can use these filters to narrow down just what you want to look at. I'll get into this in more detail in another video, but just to show you quick, we just want to see, for example, just growth only for 2019. Here we can see this is the dispersion, which is pretty high, and this is the account return, so we can figure out why it's high. So all these accounts are pretty close. This account's way off, this account's way off. So we probably need to do some research into why these 2 accounts are so different from their peers in the same composite. Quarterly, we can just get down to dig in a little bit more detail. So here we've narrowed it down. We've used the filters already to get down to Q3 of 2019, where a lot of that dispersion appears to be driven. So we can see that you know, material deviations for some accounts that quarter. So it just requires some research to go back and figure out why that's the case. The final tab is just some rules. So this is where you would see if a minimum asset level was applied, if a significant cash flow policy was applied. In this case, they were not, but if they were, that information would be listed here to make it clear what was applied when running these returns. If these rules were in here and the rules were broken, that's something that would be flagged on this tab, showing if a cash flow was above the threshold, but not removed from the composite. So then we would know we need to go in, remove this account, rerun the numbers to get results that properly exclude that account based on that rule. So that's really it for the review of this report. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I'm happy to discuss in more detail. Thanks very much.